Hello again everyone, Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube video segment, I'm going to be talking about a town that I grew up in, or essentially grew up in. It was called Williston Park, and it's located in the state of New York. It's not too far, I guess you could say it would be west of Queens, New York. It weren't far from the city line. And it is located in Nassau County, Long Island. And small population. According to 2012 stat I saw online, it's 7,309. Very quaint, peaceful, tranquil village. A rape would make a headline. It's only 0.6 square miles, a very diminutive type of village. And we look at this, and it was a nice place for me to grow up in. It was, like I stated before, very peaceful. Not a lot of violence or anything. Nothing that would put me in any kind of fear or trepidation. I can remember shooting some baskets a lot of times over my grandma's, I guess you could say, in their driveway. It was a very kind of unorthodox court. It was on an incline, and one of my friends referred to it as Eddie's Court. Williston Park, the cost of living index, when I had researched this online, was like 158.4. The U.S. average was 100, so obviously the cost of living is going to be a little bit higher there. That's one thing about Williston Park. It's important, I think, if somebody is going to live there, they got to have, maybe either have a college degree or have some kind of job where they're making a fairly good amount of money. And it's not something where you're going to get a job as a clerk making $7 or whatever it is, the minimum wage, $7.25, I believe, making even $8 or $9 an hour, and you can necessarily subsist. It's just not going to necessarily work that way. According to, I believe, citydata.com, 2011 stats stated that Williston Park was the average rent per month was $1,519, and that's a little bit above what the average rent price would be. According to Reuters.com, the average asking rent on a 10/1/2013 report was $1,121.16. So you gotta make a fairly good amount of money to stay there. But of course, you know that the average, the rent is going to be proportionate with the safety or the decency of a community. I think the safer places, you're probably going to be paying a little bit more money proportionately, I believe. Another thing is the average home in the United States, according to a February 2014 report, according to, I believe it was census.gov, was $317,500, and the average for Williston Park for a housing unit, according to 2011 report I got, was $533,692. So that is pretty good. It's a pretty exorbitant amount for a home there. So like I stated before, if you're going to live there, you got to have a fairly decent job, and you may have to work outside of Williston Park. I don't remember there being an overabundance of employment opportunities in that town. I had a difficult time finding work there. That's part of the reason why I had left Williston Park. But it's a safe place, and you want to raise kids and have fairly good school district. That it is a place where you could really have a good environment and not fear to take a walk out late at night. I want to say that also I have some very good memories of Williston Park, playing basketball over on my grandma's driveway. We used to call a shot, one of the shots that we would try to take there on the basketball court, call it the high C jinx box. And the reason we called it that, it was a reference to a commercial in that period, a high C commercial where they were talking about a high C drink box. Called it the jinx box because we kept having a propensity to miss the shot almost every time it was taken from that particular spot on the court. So it was kind of like one of those shots to the side of the basket, and it was very difficult to make. So for that reason, some friends of mine and me facetiously called it the high C jinx box. I can remember going to a place called the Dairy Barn there, and somebody referred to me as the Norm of the Dairy Barn, making a reference to the character on Cheers, the hit sitcom, because Norm was a character on Cheers that was always, it seemed to be at Cheers, and because I seem to always be, or not always literally, but they're a very good part of my life hanging out at the Dairy Barn, I was referred to by somebody as the Norm of the Dairy Barn. And I just remember just some good conversations, talking with some friends there regarding sports subjects especially. There were, it was really, I looked at Williston Park as like a Mr. Rogers neighborhood. It had that Dairy Barn like about 2 blocks away from where I lived. It had a library nearby. There was a park called Albertson Park that was maybe a few blocks away from where I lived at, and it was walking distance. I can remember playing some memorable games of basketball at recreational level. Remember just playing just a lot of fun experiences with friends there. I can remember at the early part of the time I lived in Williston Park, there was a game called Kirby that I played, and some of you may know this. It was a game where one person would stand on one side of the road in a residential area. They'd have their back of their heel placed on the curb, and they would throw like a dodgeball and try to hit the other I guess you could say kind of like the curb on the other side of the road, and you would get a point for hitting it, and whoever accumulated the most points, got to like 21st or something, would win the game. And that was some fun things. I can remember playing kickball with people there, wiffle ball, playing baseball sometimes, playing football with friends. And there were some just really happy moments and memorable experiences there. A lot of people have a misconception about New York in general and think it's all rough and crime-ridden. Well, let me tell you something. I just did some research recently on the internet, and I believe it was stats for 2012, I believe it was, and it had Tennessee ranked as the most dangerous state in the nation out of the 50 states. New York did not make the top 10 on the list. So per capita, by percentage of the population, Tennessee, is where I live right now, is actually the most dangerous state in the nation. So people can think New York, what it is the crime, I believe, in New York is more concentrated in New York City, and I believe that has even diminished in recent years due to perhaps greater police work. I believe maybe more police officers are on the beat, so to speak. Now, New York, what it is that people are in the Northeast in general are probably a little bit more outspoken than other regions in the country. So it's one of those things where we look at New York and look at Tennessee. I think what I can remember more about living in Williston Park, New York, and other towns there is that the friendships were more sustained there. Here it's more about acquaintances. People might be a little bit more friendlier here or something, but when it really comes down to it and you're facing major adversity, I think every place is essentially the same. I can remember another moment in New York, in Williston Park, where my mom had gone shopping one day to a Grand Union in Williston Park, New York. And as many of you may know, in Long Island, a lot of the New York Mets players will reside there because it's not far from Queens, and Nassau County has a lot of good neighborhoods. My mom one time was gawking at a Major League Baseball player by the name of Darryl Strawberry. She didn't know who he was initially, but what happened was she was in the supermarket and she kept looking over at him, And what happened was there was somebody by Darryl Strawberry, one of his friends presumably, walked up to my mom and said, "Lady, are you looking for something?" And my mom just kind of, kind of still looking dumbfounded in that area. And finally she blurted out, top of her lungs, she said, "Wait a minute, I know who you are. You're Darryl Strawberry." And it was just unbelievable when she told me this story. I was flabbergasted, and Darryl Strawberry had gone like this, "No, lady, shh," because he wanted to be discreet and inconspicuous, like most, I believe, celebrities and sports stars like to be. And she managed to get an autograph from him. I thought that was a very memorable moment. I can remember an interesting game I played with a friend. And the friend, ironically, was actually had my birth date, was born an hour later than me, and I thought it was kind of funny. We were pretty good friends at this period, like in the mid-'80s, and it was a game where we were riding our bicycles, and I would be riding behind him, and I would be trying to hit his back tire with my front tire, and he was very elusive. He was very quick-witted, shrewd, very cunning, streetwise. And I thought, I can remember that, and it was just something where in those kind of games of any kind of wit and will, I had a hard time defeating him. He was a memorable person in my life then, and he was he was really amicable, really friendly person, and I thought that was one of the more memorable, I guess you could say it was kind of an ingenious type of game that I played with somebody there when I was a kid. So. Now, I thought that was an interesting experience. Another thing I can remember during the time when I had lived in Williston Park, I had gotten hurt when I was playing some kind of baseball somehow by myself and practicing, I guess, running around the bases. I had stumbled on, I think it was home plate, and consequently I had injured my wrist because of this. And I wound up going somewhere, I don't know where it was, maybe it was an auto dealership somewhere, and there was a boxer by the name of Jerry Cooney, and I got his autograph on the cast at that time, and I thought that was a memorable experience. Now, don't get me wrong, there were places in Williston Park where people weren't always congenial, weren't always friendly toward me, but for the most part I thought it was a good experience. Now, occasionally you do have, despite the peaceful atmosphere there overall, you do have some volatile situations that occur occasionally. On March 14th, 2014, there was an 18-year-old that was arrested for stabbing his brother multiple times. So even though it's a quintessential neighborhood in terms of its safety, you're still going to have violent periods just like you have in virtually any town or city in the United States on occasion. There's no perfect village, and obviously Williston Park wasn't and never will be one, but it will be a place that has a lot of fun memories for me. I have some friends on Facebook that are from there originally, and when I speak to them, it kind of takes me on a nostalgic trip back in time into that period. I lived there from about 1979 to 1994, and I was there sporadically for a little period before 1979, like in the mid-70s era. So another thing I want to talk about as far as Williston Park goes, I can remember, and it's still there, there was a prominent pizza place. It was called Gino's, and that had to be about the best pizza I ever had. It had as you could say, the New York sauciness in it. It was very juicy, it was delicious, it was very good. So I had a friend, I don't know if it was a friend or well, I believe it was a friend of mine that had pranked me one time, and he knew that I had this thing for pizza, and he called me up one time, and he disguised his voice, and he said, "I want a large pepperoni pizza." So I hung up on him the first and possibly second time. At least by either the second or third time he had called, and he said he wanted a large pepperoni pizza in kind of an old craggy voice. And when he said that, I picked it up, and I just took the order because I figured, well, maybe that would stifle him if I actually took the order for the pizza. My favorite thing to go in there, I remember getting a small pie, half meatball, and I just wonder if I would ever call them up today. And I said, I want a small pie, half meatball, if they would automatically know it was me, because I think a number of the people that worked at Gino's Pizza are still there at the present time. And anyway, people, that's basically what I wanted to just talk about. Some of my experiences at Williston Park, and the nice people, the people that gave me genuine friendship and it wasn't superficial, the people that did reach out to me there, I had some sustained friendships with, and this video is dedicated to this town, village, I believe incorporated village, Williston Park, New York. It's dedicated to this town, dedicated to the friends I knew there, and kind of told a little bit about me and my experiences in this nice, quaint village. So anyway, people, that will do it for this YouTube segment about Williston Park, New York. And until next time, people, stay well.